Okay. Hello, everyone. Prep time has expired. So, just a quick roll call before we start the debate. First of all, what motion are we doing?
The third motion.
Third motion. Okay. Gav, which is your veto?
We vetoed the first motion.
Okay, great. UPM, who will be going first?
My Prime Minister, which is Amira.
Okay, second.
Me, Deputy Prime Minister Sri.
Okay, who will be giving reply?
Amira.
Okay. UITM, who will be going first?
Me, Aisha.
Aisha. Okay, second.
Second me, Salsabila.
Third,
That'll be me, Zarif.
who will be giving reply?
I'll be giving reply.
You are Aisha or Salsabila?
Salsabila, sorry.
Okay. No, worries. Because I'm on another tab, you see. Okay. Timekeeper, if you're ready, without any further delay, I welcome Prime Minister to start the debate. Here.
Wait, just give me a second. Imagine I am a black man. I've experienced police brutality. I've experienced violence from the police. And then I go off and see that films and TV are romanticizing their acts and saying that no, police aren't doing this. They are overshadowing the things that police have actually done towards minorities as a whole, right? For decades, the stories told by Hollywood filmmakers and producers of police and crime dramas have been presented in a largely favorable scale towards men and women in blue. Storytellers have provided themselves on the corporation that from police departments and federal laws, they have been enlisting them as only the good side, and they have not been talking about the real issue that matters, right? So, as a premise of today's debate, I will do a couple of things. Number one, I will define to you what exactly we mean by shows and films that portray police and what do we mean by positive light. I will also define to you what behaviors do we deem not acceptable and why they are an important factor in today's debate. Why we regret it, the psychology of what happens when we do when we do portray police in a positive light. And I will end my speech with explaining what world we want to create and the things that we want to avoid in today's debate, right? So today, I will define to you the status quo. A lot of shows currently are romanticizing the police acts. That's our main argument for today. Romanticizing abuse and promoting violence. Yeah, it's big things, which will be explained later in my debate. For today's debate, the government side has a burden of proof to show why these films and shows that portray police in positive light should not be handled in today's world, and to cater to the statement that it's not just entertainment. It is never just entertainment. And the opposition side for today's debate needs to tell us why they believe that portraying police in positive light would bring more good than harm, right? So, um, continuing on with the stakeholders for today's debate, the stakeholders for today's debate aren't just the police itself, obviously, based on the motion, but also minorities that the first-hand experience police brutality. And what do we mean by police brutality, right? Police brutality is a thing. It's a real thing happening in other countries as well, mainly across the world, where police use the power that they have to coerce minorities into having illegal action taken upon them. For example, a black man, based on the stereotype that black people do crimes, a police would attack countless black people and say that they were stealing they're stealing something from the supermarket, but they weren't. Based on this stereotype and this discriminatory act, police would often act on their own immoral behaviors and marginalize more minorities, right? So what do we mean by putting them in positive light? We mean that when we are putting them in positive light, we say that we regret the films that portray that police have character portrayal where they are morally good. Now, we're not saying that we would ban these shows, but we do regret the message behind films and shows that portray police in positive light. What do we mean by morally good and positive light? What actions do we deem unacceptable, right? For example, a police catering towards a minority's needs, for example, a black man that I just mentioned earlier. We do not believe in fantasizing what should not happen happening in the film, right? Why do we regret it? Our main stand on today's debate and where we stand would be that it is never just entertainment. The opposition side might argue that at the end of the day, it's just entertainment, it's just a show, it's just a TV, it's just film, it's just acting. It's not just acting. It is never just acting. Why? Because influence exists. The concept of influence, it's a thing. And let me explain to you the psychology of how and when influence happens. See, there's a neurological pathway to when you watch films and you watch TV, you're not just watching it blindly, There is a part that you consume. That's what you do. You are consumers. You consume material that you watch, especially if the portrayal of characters are by famous actors, especially if they are by people you idolize. There is a large amount of character portrayal that you consume as a consumer watching TV, right? So what does this ensue? This promotes violence. The statement, again, it's not just entertainment. We tell you that this mindset is ignorant. How is it ignorant? Because you're turning a blind eye to the fact that it's promoting violence by saying that, by having these scenes upon the TV and having that it's ignorant to the sense that they're ignoring the concept of influence happening. And what world do we want to create, right? So first of all, we want to create a world where accountability exists. Accountability for the police's actions. Right now, police don't care whether their actions are taken into legal action or not. Why? Because they have power. Because they believe that in a world where minorities do not have power, and they have power as uniform in blue, they do have power. They have power over their rankings in a workplace, and stereotypically people would rather believe a police in uniform rather a black man on the street at night, right? So because of this, they believe that they have no accountability. Furthermore, having shows and films portray these perceptions in positive light would furthermore encourage this non-accountability thing, right? So accountability in the sense that it would promote police brutality. Number two, it romanticizes abuse. What do we mean by romanticizing abuse specifically? When we have police scenes shown on TV in positive light, it romanticizes abuse in the sense that it normalizes police behavior, in the sense that it overshadows them with the light. Issues will not be discussed. Issues such as police brutality, violence will not be discussed if we keep portraying police in positive light in films and TVs. Why? Because we are giving an image to the public that police are good. Maybe there's a few bad cops out there, but it's not a lot. You're giving that mindset to people that although violence exists and within police, but you're saying that these violence isn't contributing to like the whole majority of the police, right? And number three, and lastly, you are promoting the marginalization of minorities. Minorities are already oppressed. By having police in positive light, you are taking away attention from their issues, and furthermore, you are promoting discriminatory acts, right? So what I've told you today, right? I've told you and defined what exactly this motion needs and the burden of proof on both our sides. I told you why we regret it, the psychology of what happens in a world where we do not want, and what world we want to create, and the things we want to avoid. Thank you very much.
Thank you. To kickstart the opposition's case, leader of opposition, here.
All right, I will be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. In an episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, a character who is a cop ends up suffering police brutality himself, all because of his skin color. Just goes to show that the show does not shy away from these themes. And it's not a coincidence that Brooklyn Nine-Nine is also a part of the title of today's motion, which is "This House regrets television shows and films that portray the police in a positive light." An example, Law and Order, CSI, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Now, before all of that, we would like to clarify. I would like to clarify side opposition's stance in all of this, in that we do not regret this motion, and in fact, we say that portraying police in a positive light actually serves to portray how justice and cops should be, how they handle cases, how they treat criminals, civilians, and these shows are supposed to exemplify that. And in fact, we are not saying that we are not over glorifying these police. We're not saying they're angels. We know that they have flaws, but we are emphasizing on how they can overcome these flaws um, and still become better cops. So we concede to the fact that police brutality is a fact, and as long as these things exist, portraying police in a positive light will set an example of a utopia. We believe, but why this motion stands, why we believe our side wins, is because we do not in fact over glorify the police, but we prove to you that police, as in these characters who play the police, have their own flaws, yet can contend with these to become good cops. So we show that it is possible, instead of perpetuating a mindset of a world where cops are always bad. We show that it is possible if they overcome their flaws. So we believe that the stakeholders, which the government fails to clarify, is that at large and the police force. Those are the two stakeholders. And in upholding this motion, we say that the relationship between them flourishes. And we will prove to you, our burden of proof today is that we prove to you that only negative portrayals don't always work to educate the public and all that. And we want to stick with the status quo. These movies and shows should still exist. And they serve a greater part of a greater whole. So first of all, now on to rebuttals. Corruption and they say that government believes that corruption and police brutality are perpetuated because of these media's failure to hold them accountable and all that. And we of side opposition actually believe that shows and entertainment should be used as a medium to explore possibilities of these things, of cops actually not doing these things. Because if I want a real world counterpart or accurate depictions, I just watch the news. So these medias actually serve to provide an example. It's possible. And government also says that it promotes violence and influences masses. Now we concede to that fact because media can actually influence, but we actually prove to you that otherwise in our speech today, because it actually influences people to uphold justice in cops. So police brutality is actually deeply rooted in other cases, such as white supremacy, not just these movies. Okay, so and aside from that, the government also mentions the romanticization of police, which we of side opposition has already said. These shows do not actually over-glorify the police. They actually show these police with their own character flaws and all that. But we believe that these movies should be viewed, and other than that, we believe that these movies should be viewed in a critical light. And since these movies are in fact made for adults who are capable of critical thinking, so if these adults still believe police brutality is not a thing, as these good cop movies would lead you to believe, then they will not be swayed because they're capable of critical thinking. So on to my first argument, which is media as a whole actually actually sets an example of how things should be. Now, there are 3 layers of analysis to this, which is first, media portrayals shows an example of how things should be, and it portrays some untrustworthy police force. If it only portrays untrustworthy police force, people would lose trust, and then they would lose hope in the police force. Now, strong and positive representation can help fight and break down these stereotypes. And actual on the off chance that there are good policemen in this world, then when they try to do something good, then then these stereotypes will actually affect when they do try to uh, fix the justice system in the police force. Thus, this will create, no, this is impactful because it will create an unbalanced society where there are people who seek other means of help aside from the police. So this will look like site governments as well will look like riots, horrible protests that could end horribly. And now, good cop movies and bad cop movies, as as we say, is that they're two sides of the same coin. We have to have good cop movies because they will provide an example or hope that things can be made right. So it's not just a hopeless thing. Media should be used as a means to explore these themes. So overall, people will lose trust in the police force, in the government, because who are actually doing their job to implement stated laws. Now, again, we believe that police brutality is not, in fact, due to these movies, but in fact, because of rooted in other issues such as white supremacy, and those issues should be addressed more than just this. So, in that, if you're saying that we are lying to them, because no, that's not true. Because we're not glorifying. We're just showing this is how things should be. And if you're saying we're taking advantage of people's mindsets, um, like swaying, influencing their mindsets, we're actually saying that they're capable of critical thinking because these shows are in fact made for adults. So, and even if on off chance a child were to happen upon these movies, it's up to the parent and teachers to educate them right. So, in that, I have never been prouder to oppose this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. Here.
I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, so I will begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. So, first and foremost, I would like to begin my speech with a couple of rebuttals, and then I'll move on to my arguments, in where I will be explaining the three things that we, as government, sees the need to regret the making of films and television shows that put police in positive limelight, and I'll get to that in a minute. So, for my rebuttals, first and foremost, side opposition has mentioned that people, if they want to see the real truth, they could have just watched the news instead. But people don't watch the news mainly because of the way the information is being presented. They rather be watching a television show where there are plots, or where their favorite actress or actors are being acted there, where they can support the film, or the different types of media portrayal of the film itself, the way it is being represented. That is what a TV show and a film is all about. But what we are trying to claim in our world of side government is that we say that these TV shows are not as it seems. They're not following what reality is mostly mainly about. Because the more they touch about the reality, the more their fame depicts. So they believe that by creating a world that people want to see, they get their audience views, and because of that, they become a more successful TV show, because that's what people want to see, that's what people want to hear. And for my second rebuttal, you claim that the TV shows are mainly for adults who are capable of critical thinking. Let me ask side opposition a question. How sure are you this isn't viewed by teenage kids all around the world who get violently motivated or heavily influenced by the things that they see from the television show? How sure are you? What proof can you give it to me? Another thing is, how sure are you that all of these adults that are watching these TV shows are capable of critical thinking? At the end of the day, these people believe what they see is most convincing. They don't just they don't do thorough research of the certain case that they just watch of the television, the TV show and whatnot. They see what they feel looks most convincing is what they believe and what they hold on to for the rest of their life. So this is what the rebuttals that I have to present. So moving on to my arguments that I like to build. So in reality, the things that are portrayed in TV shows and medias and films are flat out false. They claim that police officers are highly intelligent, that they can make up a case out of a few clues left without any sort of doubt and misleading concepts. And they always portray that these cops are not corrupt, they are clean of heart, and which is definitely not true, because we battle against corruption a lot of times. And moving on, oftentimes, um, sorry, moving on to my argument, the first reason as to why we should
Will
why
I?
uh, once my speech is done, please. So moving on to the first reason as to why side government regrets these TV shows is because they often glorify the abuse of power and they set impossible standards. For example, these cops often go against rules or orders set by their superiors because they feel like their instinct or their gut is telling them that there is something more to what they are being told not to do. So they go against these orders, and they use brutal violence and whatnot to achieve their goal, which is in most case scenarios does not take place in the real world because these cops are trained to listen to their superiors no matter what their gut instinct is telling them. If they were given orders, they will follow orders. But most of the time in TV shows and whatnot, they go against these orders secretly. They get to solve the case and then they be awarded. And that's what usually people will be like, oh my gosh, this cop is intelligent and they managed to do what they think is best for the victim and whatnot. Um, and in these TV shows and movies, they cause so much property damage, and they endanger their lives. They put their lives on the brink of death, in order to save the lives of citizens in the worst possible crimes, which sets impossible standards and impossible hopes. Because these false expectations, these are false expectations. These police officers in real life don't actually put themselves in that position or damage that much of property in order to just shoot a guy down, because first and foremost they are not funded that much to repair all these damages, and they won't be able to protect the people like that, and you're just letting these people believe that they will be protected by the worst possible crimes, and this is just going to serve false expectations. My second reason as to why we should regret these TV shows is because they portray cops as though they seem to know everything. They seem to be in the right place at the right time. They seem to catch minor details that could be so minor that most of the time is just being brushed away, and they show that they are so smart, but which isn't true, because cops are not as highly trained as any of the special forces over here. Police are not as highly trained, and they don't and also they don't solve as many cases as portrayed in the TV shows. Most of the time, 90% of the time, every time you have a TV show of a cop of a case, the case is usually solved by the police. But that's not like it. In US research in 2012, they only managed to solve 64 cases in a year. But if you look at the number of TV shows and films that are out there that are producing every week, is definitely um, surpassing the number of cases that are actually being solved in the country. And when you have these TV shows and movies, they often collab with forensics and to show how science helps them, but not all the time. First and foremost, you don't always get the DNA or the fingerprints of your criminals on the crime scene, but that seems to be the case in every of the TV shows or films. And second of all, these forensic labs are not as updated or as highly equipped as to what the media portrays. There are many forensics labs which aren't portrayed, and they don't often serve justice to all of the victims. Many of these cases are just closed or left hanging because these cops they don't actually want to go the extra mile to solve something. If they feel like it's a dead end, they just close the case or they just leave it hanging. And most of the time, these victims don't get to see justice and their criminals aren't put to jail. And my third reason is because they aren't actually fair. They racial profile a lot of the people, like my prime minister has mentioned. They are uh, they claim that there are so many cases. There are recent case where they claim that this black man was the cause for one of the cases, but they did not have any proof or did not even ask for his ID. They just said that, yeah, you look like the guy. They were racial profiling him, and until they checked his ID to check that he was actually an FBI agent who was just there for a couple of drinks, they let him go. But if he was just a regular citizen, do you think they would have let him go? I think they would have brought him down to the station and they would have actually just tortured him. So they are, um, when you put these kind of scenarios and glorify them without actually portraying the severity of it, this shows that we are just putting false expectations towards the audience. So with that, I rest my case.
Thank you, Deputy Leader of Opposition. Here.
All right, give me a second. Sorry. I'm starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, under the motion, this House regrets television shows and films that do portray the police in a positive light. Under side opposition, we refuse to stand by this motion, and at the end of the day, I'll prove to you why. So first things first, I'll explain to you the structure of my speech today. The first is I'm going to be rebutting the points given by the Deputy Prime Minister. Second, I'll be reinforcing some things said by my my Leader of Opposition. Sorry. The third, I'll be explaining to you my own arguments that I'll bring to the table afterwards. So first things first, important rebuttals. Now, from the get-go, I just want to explain and clarify again. When we say that, when we're talking about portrayals or portrayals of police in a positive light, right? We believe that under our side, we never intend to over glorify these police officers. We don't believe that there are some messengers of heaven. We don't believe that they are pure, so pure to the point where they can escape corruption. They are free from any sort of abuse or malpractice, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, rebuttals is that under this motion today, there is one very crucial clash that needs to be addressed, right? Influence. Influence is an important clash in today's debate. Under our side, we believe influence works for the best interest of the people. It motivates people to do better. It supports these people, right? But under their side, they believe that influence works in very detrimental ways. For example, as a minority. So I'll give you an example of how influence can be turned around, right? As a minority, knowing about the realities of the police force will allow them to be more motivated, if you think about it in that way, to correct the system that's very unjust towards them. If you think about it in that way, it's very much possible, right? That they do everything in their power to stop these corruptions from it impacting other people. And what the Deputy Prime Minister said is that most of the speech consisted of how the portrayals of police in the media is very misleading. It's false because what they portrayed will never be as it is in real life. Of course, it'll be a bit unrealistic. Let's be serious here. It's a television show. Like, it won't be a television show. It will be the news instead if they depict realistic portrayals of the police, right? What's important here, ladies and gentlemen, we need to understand is how people digest it, how people take bits and pieces of these unrealistic portrayals, right? How it motivates them to do better, how it gives these people the drive to be better, or even if they can't be on the same standard that these portrayals show, it'll at least make them motivated to be at least on the same standard. So these unrealistic things that have been mentioned by the Deputy Prime Minister could possibly be a stepping stone for these people. Like what my Leader of Opposition has told you, right? It sets an example of how the police forces should be in order for them to be better. And even if it's true that the reality isn't as what you see in the portrayals of these television shows, the impacts will be heavier if you depict it in the reality where, police officers are corrupt, police officers are brutal, and which I will explain in my arguments. So moving on to my arguments, right? The first argument is that it gives motivation to people to involve themselves in the police force. So the slight hope that these, TV shows give for these slight hope that you hold on to, these portrayals, they give invites to people to join the workforce. When people have the slightest bit of trust in the police, there's always room for change. Future generations would feel very much motivated to join the police workforce because of the portrayals on television, even if they themselves know that it's not true. Even if the things turn out to be different, like I said, it would act as a stepping stone for these people to try much harder to make things right, to be at least on the same par as what has been portrayed. So even if it takes time, right? Corruption isn't solved overnight. There must be change taken to solve these deep-rooted issues. So when there's motivation, people will try to do better. And then, for example, that I give you, right, in media portrayals, good police, like what the Deputy Prime Minister has given you so many examples. The good police solves issues, becomes a hero at the end of the day. This helps with the nurture of the passion for wanting to become a police officer instead of joining. Just because, unlike some people who join the police force, just because they think, oh, you know what, it's an easy job. Maybe I'll just join it just because I want to join. And when we compare it to these people who join because they've seen the portrayals of these police force in a good light, they'll be much more motivated, thinking, oh, I'm doing this because I like it. It's my passion, right? So what happens if instead the police workforce is portrayed in a very negative light? People will immediately take a dislike towards the police. They refuse to even have the slightest bit of faith, leaving the current situation of the police as corrupt as it is, if there are any possibilities of it being so, right? So in a country which upholds the law, there's a need for these police officers to be trusted. if the public, let's say, if the public loses trust, right, worst comes to worst, people will begin to develop negative feelings for the police force, which are in fact a part of the public services, right? They are part of the law, ladies and gentlemen. So eventually, people will lose trust in the law and in the country who enact these laws. So what happens? So for example, right, I give you, if people don't trust in the police, people won't report crimes, people won't acknowledge the police as an important part of justice, right? They will feel like, for example, that I give you, in a situation where they see a crime, but then they'll be like, oh, I won't report it because I know the police won't do anything about it. Is this that simple stereotype that's been, embedded in their minds because of, if let's say, the motion stands for today, right? If police are portrayed in a negative light, they'll think, oh, because police are all bad, they're all bad cops. So none of them will do anything right. Everything will just go wrong. And simply, I just won't report it because I know nothing will be done. So police force are not acknowledged as an important part of justice. So what happens after this? Like another layer of analysis that I can give you is that justice will be imbalanced, right? A part of justice is the court system, the judges, the lawyers. They think, oh, because police who are a part of the law are already corrupted. Why should I trust any other parts of the public services, right? And ladies and gentlemen, something that I like to clarify before we enter this debate is that it's inevitable that corruption is bound to happen, right? Because no matter how much you think about it, we're all humans, and like these police officers, they're humans, right? Some of them are humans who do bad things, and of course, these bad things are very inexcusable. They're very detrimental, and so to expect the police force to be a force so pure, we think that that is a false statement to depict by the end of today. So as long as there are people who are willing to improve it internally, as long as there's people who hold on to the small bits and pieces of hope that are still there, we think that it's enough to say that, there are possibilities of the police force still being trusted at the end of the day. And I hope that by everything that I've said, you will not allow this motion to stand. And with that, I've never been prouder to rest my keys. Thank you.
Thank you. Gov Whip, here.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the whip of government, and I will be fulfilling two tasks, which is number one, providing my rebuttals, and number two, I will provide a world where government side is much better than opposition side. Now, before I step into my rebuttals, let me tell you, where do people get their first um, first education? Where do people get their first influence? They get it from TV shows. TV shows are the most basic thing where people can consume information and where they can analyze things and relate it to the current world, current status quo, which is what my first speaker has mentioned. It says that TV shows are the places where we are consuming information and we're then relating it to the real life world. What opposition side fail to understand from our side or from the government side is that we are not banning, we're not saying that a TV show we just need to just portray the bad sides of a police. We're not saying that. We are saying that there needs to be an equal amount of the bad and the good in a TV show. So starting off with my first rebuttal, you say that Brooklyn Nine-Nine, you
You
provided an example. No, thank you, not yet, please. You said that Brooklyn Nine-Nine, um, you said that they only touched on you said that they touched on issues on minority, but you only said about one issue. Now let me tell you about the things where they reflected which are not related to the current situation. Brooklyn Nine-Nine provides a analogy where everyone from different races, from different cultures can work together peacefully and harmoniously. So for example, Brooklyn Nine-Nine that consists of Hispanic people, white people, black people. In that show, they just portrayed that everyone can work together, everyone can solve the case together, and everyone respects each other's need. But that is not what's happening in this real life. And another thing is what Brooklyn Nine-Nine shows is that what my second speaker mentioned is that you can go against your superiors, which does not happen in the real life. Okay, moving on to my second rebuttal. The opposition leaders say that claims that we are not saying that police are angels and we are showing their flaws. But how are you guys showing their flaws? What is the method? What is the steps taken in showing their flaws? You're only showing their flaws through media, which can, what my second speaker say, there can be news. There can be hidden. What government side is trying to say, they are showing their flaws through television shows where people consume most information from. Now, moving on to my third rebuttal, you said that everyone can just watch the news and gain information from there. But let me tell you, how many people in this generation watch the news in the first place, especially teenagers who are the future leaders of tomorrow. How they prefer watching TV shows rather than watching the news. So why not we implement what government is trying to do, is we're trying to implement a balanced amount of the good and the bad in the police force, and we're trying to show it through TV shows so that teenagers can get information from there. And then moving on to my fourth rebuttal, you said that there are good policemen and then in the world, and then they should be shown of their actions which are shown in TV shows. Yes, I'm not denying the fact that there are good policemen, but you can count the number of policemen who are good in the real police force of today. And you're showing that, what TV shows are showing, that there's good policemen in all, that police are a good force and that there's no bad side to them. Now, moving on to my fifth rebuttal, you say that riots and protests can end up in a horrible condition. But let me tell you now, what about the Black Lives Matter protests? Wasn't Floyd served? Served because of the protest that was taken by the people. Yes, it did end up in a riot and in a havoc situation, but end of the day, the goal was achieved. The justice was served to George Floyd. So how does riots end up in a bad cause? Now, uh, you mentioned that we should only provide a positive light on police force, but you never show how do we portray the bad information to the bad side of the police force to the generation. You provide us that we're just looking through media, which I have counted saying that not many people are looking towards the media, but you never provide us another solution. You only stated media. What are the other solutions? What side government is trying to tell you is that we are using TV shows which are related to the current generation, which are part to the current generation, and they can watch these TV shows and gain information and understand the status quo or understand the current situation that the police force is facing. And you said, the second speaker of side opposition said that when they watch TV shows, they'll be motivated to enter the police force. Now, what side government is trying to say, when you do an equal side of the bad and the good of a police force in a TV show, what can it do? It can our motivate the younger generation to enter the force without culture shock. Number one, because when you only portray the good side of police, you're only portraying when you portray the good side of police, when you only portray a good side of police, you're providing a culture shock to them, knowing that when they enter the system, they are going to face with they're going to face multiple issues. They're going to be saying, oh my god, there's corruption existing here, and many more. So what is the solution for that? What is government side saying is that when we provide an equal amount of good and bad side on police force, we can allow generation to be motivated, which then the motivation point that side opposition gave stands with government side. And now the last rebuttal will be that of what side opposition has said is that people won't report it, people will take the police force lightly. They won't want to report cases. By what do you mean by not reporting cases? I mean, everyone wants to come in the end. Everyone has one goal, is to provide a secure world, a world that is one, a world that is secure. So, for example, like what I said about the Black Lives Matter, people themselves took the opportunity, took the initiative to go and riot, and justice was served. So, why you saying people are being ignorant about the issues is much wrong. And with that, I rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you. Upwith, here.
All right. Can you hear my voice clearly?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. I'll start my speech in 3, 2. Members of the floor, members of the chair, it seems that although side government gave the fact that people nowadays don't watch news rather than TV shows, the matter of fact is how government is portraying their world. It seems like they don't watch these TV shows either. Why do I say this? Well, because in reality, these TV shows actually depict these amounts of they don't only depict this positive and good look upon these policemen, but they also give sufficient coverage on what actually happens in the real world at the end of the day. And this is status quo right now, ladies and gentlemen. So this is what we're going to phrase and how we're going to continue our debate today at the end of the day, right? So what am I going to do in my speech, right? So first of all, I'm going to go through all the rebuttals that have been from all the points given by side government, which are actually more or less irrelevant in this case. Then I'll go on to the clash points in this debate. And last but not least, I'll go on to the comparisons of what the two worlds look like on side government and on side opposition, and why we do not think that we should regret the fact that we put positive light on these policemen at the end of the day, right? So first of all, let's go on to rebuttals, right? First of all, they talked about how they give an example of how police will arrest people like black people although they are innocent, right? But why would you look at this in a single scope, right? Why would they project only this example, right? The matter of fact is because only this example can help them in that case, right? Whereas in the reality of the case, most policemen out there are actually good people and good citizens who want to help the nation as a whole, and this is what is portrayed in these TV shows, right? They only cherry pick those certain few bad apples in the police force to show them and to say that they want to regret this, right? Moving on, they stated that sure, it is just entertainment, but influence is done through these TV shows. Yes, we consider the fact that it is just entertainment. It's not just entertainment, but we also tell you that these portrayals can actually help the quality to increase the quality and the betterment of the society and the cops and the stakeholders that we have today, right? As stated by my prime minister and further stated by my leader opposition and deputy leader opposition, that we give multiple benefits by portraying the good side and the actuality of how these policemen are, right? Because we say that these policemen can actually encourage these people who are younger and who look up to these policemen, and they can see how they can actually help society by becoming policemen, rather than portraying a bad side of the police, right? When in this case, and when you portray the bad side of the police, it will actually, in the end of the day, create a more negative impact and more delusional perception towards the police, right? Where we will actually lose trust in this policeman, and at the end of the day, this will actually hurt the society as a whole, because we, at the end of the day, we don't trust the police, we don't believe in the police, and then who else do we have to rely on? If we don't rely on the police, then we have no one else at the end of the day, right? Moving on. They also talked about how these shows will actually create police brutality, right? The matter of fact is that, ladies and gentlemen, to the on-side government, yes, they stated that, sure, these types of videos, these types of shows will create police brutality, right? But the fact of the matter is, they fail to show us and clarify and put enough sufficient analysis on how exactly these policemen can direct these, by people watching these TV shows, it can directly increase the amount of police brutality, right? Because sure, they talk about like these people are vulnerable, these people who are vulnerable can watch these TV shows, right? But how exactly and when did they ever prove that that this, by watching somebody randomly watching a TV show, can directly correlate to that person, facing police brutality at the end of the day? That is such a vague correlation, and it doesn't really work in this debate today, right? Moving on. They also stated about how movies portray that these police are highly intelligent and they are never corrupt at the end of the day. That is one of the most clear examples that that side government have not been watching these shows, right? Because at the end of the day, as stated by deputy leader of opposition, in these shows they actually do depict corruption. They do depict problems in the police force. But the matter of fact is, as stated by the whip just now, that it's like a little amount of the corruption in these shows, right? Why is this exactly? Why is this the case, right? The matter of fact is, relative to the TV shows that are aired on air, the amount of police brutality and police corruption compared relatively to the police force out there in the Thai world and relative to the TV shows, it is a minority, right? So even if that is depicted in the TV shows, even if it was put into reality, these TV shows were depicted in reality, these corruptions and these problems is police force are a minority and might only take like 1-2 episodes of the whole entire like 20 episodes of the whole TV show, right? Because that's the true actuality and the reality of the situation that we have at hand today, right? So what do we bring to you on side opposition, right? We tell you that that the police force, putting the police force in positive light will greatly benefit the society at the end of the day, right? We tell you that that with having these police force, it will portray how they actually have to act in the reality and portray the best side of the police, right? So this will show that people can trust the police. This will tell you and your kids and whoever is watching that yeah, these are people who will help you and help society at the day. Because if police would actually corrupted as so much corrupted as stated and as emphasized on side government, why do we still have police today? Why have we not abolished all the police and create a new force at the end of the day, right? Why do we still have peace and harmony in most of the states, right? Let's not disregard like foreign sensitive issues, but like why do we still have peace and harmony? It's because we still have the police. We have people to regulate us each and every day, right? So the comparison here is right. We show you that on side government, we tell you that even if like they say it's not effective, right? We say that even a worst case scenario is that we give a better scenario at the end of the day. At the end of the day, right? On side government, they say that we're by regretting all these and did not portraying the policemen how they should be portrayed, they will actually in the end of the day portray a false sense of how police should be how police should be how should be analyzed and how people should react to police, right? So on side government, we ensure that these people have more trust and faith in the police, have more trust and faith in society. And on side of government, they never showed us directly how exactly these types of TV shows will have and will could directly impact and increase police brutality. So with that, it is sure and true that we should properly oppose this motion. Thank you.
Update. Sorry, up reply. My mistake. Up reply.
Hold on.
Okay.
Restarting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, members of the floor, there are 3 parts to my speech today: what we said and why we win this debate today. Second, what they said and why they will lose this debate today. And third is why we bring home today's debate. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's go over it very smoothly. Let's go over it very slowly in order to fully grasp the situation of what's going on here, okay? So, the first thing that I'd like to talk about is what our side has said. So, from the get-go, my leader of opposition has told you one of her points was that the media sets an example of how things should be, right? The media, although it was heavily argued by the Deputy Prime Minister that the media portrays very unrealistic situations of police, how media portrays, very intelligent people when in reality they are not like that, and so on, right? If the media only portrays untrustworthy police, like what I've told you before, people would immediately lose trust in the police, right? It increases negative connotations around the police. I've told you that before. And therefore, it's very important why the media has to set an example towards these police to do better, or at least be an inspiration to those who are wanting to become police officers in the future, right? And from the get-go, we already told you that we never intend to glorify these police. We concede to the fact that corruption exists. We concede to the fact that violence and police brutality exists. But we disagree with government's arguments throughout the entire debate, was how we disagree with the fact that these are all stemming from positive portrayals of police officers in television shows. We tell you that that's not how it is. That is not how it is. And we tell you that under my speech before, I've told you that trust in the law should always be there, or a country will collapse as a whole. I've told you that motivation coming from these portrayals are very important to create more qualified police officers, or in the future create more police officers that are very high in quality and are very dignified, right? Because they are inspired by these so-called unrealistic portrayals of the police officers. So next things is what what their side has told you. The first speaker came up to us and tells us how this portrayal promotes police brutality, right? It encourages violence. We from the get-go, we've told you that we say these assumptions are false. From my leader of opposition speech have told you that this assumption that she has made is false, when most of police brutality comes from problems such as race, right? Coming from white supremacies, like the case of George Floyd, which the government whip has given, right? Because George Floyd is a black man and the police is a white police officer, right? It stems from so being called white supremacists. And we tell you that to say that this is all stemming from possibilities of people watching television shows are very unrealistic and very unlikely. So saying how portrayals of media are very unrealistic, which we already replied to, and say that it's a television show, right? It's bound to be unrealistic, or else you can just watch the news and see how things are actually so. So being culture shock, right? When I've clearly shown you why these culture shocks can act as a motivation for these people. I've told you again and again, even if situations were different, it can be a stepping stone for these people. So main focus coming from them is that people will be so shocked, people will be so betrayed when they realize things aren't as they aren't as depicted in the media. We've told you that other forms of media still exist, right? There's the internet, there's social media. There's no way that you will be so clueless up to the point where you believe something portrayed on television shows are so like are real forms of depiction, right? You have to be really clueless to assume something like Brooklyn 99 is realistic. We've replied to everything that they said, but they have yet to clarify to us, right, why positive portrayals can't possibly be motivations, or they didn't analyze it enough for their point to stand over ours, right? We've told you, we've given you layers over layers of analysis on how positive portrayals could help. We've told you this and this could help, yet their side refuses to provide deeper analysis on how these portrayals are indeed the main source of the problems that they claim. They've been talking about problems all over again, but they never did talk about how, these are indeed coming from the television shows themselves. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that once you listen to my reply speech, you'll agree that the motion today will fall and the win will come back to side opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. To conclude the debate, Gov reply. Here.
Ladies and gentlemen, a couple of things we believe in on side government, right? We do not believe in violence. We do not believe in promoting violence. We do not believe in romanticizing abuse. We do not believe in fantasizing a world that does not happen. See, the opposition side has told you again and again how they apparently are not glorifying the situation at all. That they're just apparently just showing it. It's just showing it because it's just entertainment. Because we should not take it that seriously and not be that clueless. See, in our 3 speeches for the government side, we have told you that the mindset, because this is just entertainment, is completely ignorant. And why this mindset is what continues to cater towards other problems that I have explained in my speech, such as police brutality, romanticized abuse, and other stuff, right? So let's start off by giving a recap on what we have said and what they have said, and what contradictory issues have not been resolved and what have not been addressed, right? And overall, why in today's debate, government should win this case. Right, so I've told you in my speech. I've told you about what we mean by positive light, and the opposition side mentioned that we never gave a proper neurological pathway as to how these issues arises on our case. When again and again, my speech, my DPM speech, and my Gov Whip has told you by layers a complete structure on how things happen. In my speech, I've told you about accountability. I've told you about how psychology of influence happens and why influence is a big thing in today's debate, which the opposition side disregards and says that, influence isn't that big of a problem. And that people should have the mental capability. My DPM has addressed this by saying that how can you ensure, she has proposed a question, how can you ensure that teenagers or children are not watching these types of shows, right? Which has never been addressed throughout this whole debate, and by none of the opposition side, right? So, in my speech, I've already talked about influence, and the leader of opposition said that that. And the leader of opposition and all three of the speakers basically are talking about trust. How trust is how people won't have trust in police because and then they can't rely. Nobody's saying that we can't rely on police. Nobody's saying that we can't trust police. But we are providing discourse. On our side, we're providing discourse that problems happen, that issues arise. You are not going to live in a world where you are ignorant towards these issues, right? So one episode, regarding what the leader of opposition said about how one episode isn't enough to counterattack all those other episodes in the whole show, right? There is a valid issue between trust and spreading awareness. See, for example, if you have when cases of domestic abuse happen, we're not saying that, oh, you can't trust your parents, you can't trust your spouse or so. But we are saying we are spreading awareness because we believe that spreading awareness is much more important than providing distrust in happy families, right? For example, the DLO also talked about it's a TV show anyways, and that we failed to mention how people digest it. But if they were listening carefully to my speech, I've already talked about the pathway, about times and time again why and how the influence happens and how we consume material on our part as consumers. Moving on, my government made direct links towards my speech and rebutted the opposition's example about Brooklyn Nine-Nine. She also rebutted the riots and by saying that it does not end in bad outcomes, especially in the case of George Floyd, where it actually brings light to the issue. Right? We acknowledge that the opposition whip had said a few things that are contradictory that I've already addressed. He also said that on workforce, and we believe that on our side, people are more inclined to join in order to fight corruption, right? So that's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone. Seeing that this is a silent round, that is all for today. I will see all of you tomorrow. Yeah, that's all. Thank you everyone for the
Thank
debate.
you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.